All right, well, hello everyone. My name is Crystal McGowan from Novatariant Pathways, and this is a segment called the Novatariant Stories. And I'm here to highlight women who changed their life. That's what a Novatariant means. And today I have a really special guest, Charleen Knosent. And she is a friend of mine and also a colleague, and she has a really beautiful ministry and heart for women herself. And I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself. But she is a health coach and also a discipleship coach. So Charleen, welcome, and tell us just a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Well, I am very excited to be here. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Like you had mentioned, I am a discipleship coach and a health coach. I'm originally from Michigan, and I moved out to Massachusetts with my family. And that's where I met my husband, and we have 2 children. And eventually we decided that we wanted to have a little bit of a slower pace of life and kind of enjoy the rest of our lives. So we moved from Massachusetts to Tennessee to raise our own food, our own fruits and vegetables and livestock. And during that time, I had homeschooled my children as well. So we have been very blessed to have acreage and to home educate the kids. And they're all grown now, but what a privilege it has been.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your business. What's the name of your company, and what exactly do you do there?
Okay. Well, I was able to create a business called Renewed Health and Heart. And it encompasses both physical and spiritual. So as a health coach, I deal with the physical part of it, and as a spiritual coach or a discipleship mentor, I have the heart part of it. It is my belief that in order for us to be all that God has created us to be, that there is a wholeness and a holiness that needs to be a part of our lives. So Renewed Health and Heart kind of encompasses both the health and the heart.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and in that, I actually disciple mothers, Christian mothers. It's where my heart is. Mm-hmm. And I have the opportunity to do either one-on-one coaching or in-home coaching. And that is my most favorite, going into their homes and blessing the mamas, helping them set up their homes in order and discipling their children, cultivating the character of Christ in their children. And the ultimate goal is that mommy will have some peace and some joy and contentment while her children are young, instead of just missing the joy of the moment, being in the present. So that is a complete joy and a privilege for me to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. To go beyond just surviving, right?
Exactly.
That sounds really lovely. Well, for those of you who are interested, I will hook you up with Charleen's information at the end. But she's actually joining us today to talk about her journey of forgiveness. She has a really amazing story that I think will really bless you. But Charleen, just give us a small just description of where you've been and why you want to share your story with us today.
Okay. Well, I'm excited about sharing my story because I think that it will encourage and empower other women to seek forgiveness sooner rather than later. What I came to discover, Crystal, is that time was not my healer, that Jesus was my healer. And so I really want to encourage other women to seek the gift of forgiveness sooner rather than later.
And so how long did your forgiveness journey take you that you would make that comment?
Well, I would say at least, well, let's see, I got married when I was 22. And then immediately there was, of course, struggles in our marriage because of my own past and all that I had to work through. And then I raised my children. So 20, 30, 10, probably about 15 years.
Okay.
Too long.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what was the hardest part of the struggle in that 15-year journey?
Well, interestingly, from birth, I was thinking about how I actually came into the world. And I was thinking that I was actually put on a pathway of fear and anger and kind of like self-doubt or self-hatred right from the very beginning, with an absentee father and a strict disciplinarian mother. And when I needed security and love and adventure the most, I was sexually pursued by by an offender or by a family member who had violated me. And then through my formative and fun years, what ended up happening is I became very insecure and lonely and frightened. And so with anger and dissatisfaction kind of gripping my life, I had to search for security and love and purpose. My heart was broken. My mind was confused, and my soul was very much wounded. And so with loneliness and dissatisfaction gripping my life, I had to figure out how to make my marriage work, and I had to learn how to parent with grace and mercy. These are all things that when I got married, I didn't realize were a part of me based on the insecurities and the guilt and the shame. So with God's grace, though, he's brought me out of that.
Yeah, so because of some brokenness, there was all this guilt and shame that you didn't even realize that you had. Mm-hmm. And so you struggled with this for 15 years before you finally kind of had a breakthrough moment. What was that process like for you?
Well, what happened with me is that one of the things that happened with me was that people had told me that I was damaged goods. And I remember being very, very angry with that. And then one time I remember somebody told my husband that I would always struggle. And I was so angry with that as well. And so it's interesting that when you make choices like getting married or having children, and you have all that from the past, what happens is you end up creating more struggles, or you have more obstacles, you have more challenges. And then if you can't work through that guilt and that shame, you end up having more. And so it just escalated for me. And I ended up not being a person who could control myself, very, very angry. I tried to control everybody else, and wherever I went, just anger just spewed out of me. And it was, so not only did I have all that from the past, I was creating more. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really surprised me, Crystal, was that I couldn't figure out how to get out of that place. And that's what was so frustrating, is that you seek so many people and you are exhausted, and then you feel rejected. And it just didn't seem like there was any hope or any help for me. Mm-hmm.
So what changed for you? How did you get out of that place?
I ended up thinking to myself, this is enough. I've had enough. I ended up taking $60, and I walked into a counselor's office, and I said, I need to know how to love my husband and how to enjoy this Christian life, because this is not working for me. Mm-hmm. And I seriously thought that I would have like a 1, 2, 3 ABC and I'd be out of there. Mm-hmm. But it didn't work that way. But it was the beginning. It was the starting point for me to receive the gift of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, before you walked into that counselor's office, like, how did you cope with all of that? You talked about your anger and just kind of spewing out. Like, how did you manage all that in that season?
I didn't manage it very well, which is one of the reasons why I really would encourage other people to seek the gift of forgiveness sooner than later, as soon as possible. For me, I couldn't, to be honest with you, I didn't handle it very well. Mm-hmm. I was very angry. I was very insecure. I was very full of guilt. I was full of shame. I felt rejected. I felt all of that. And I went to church and I read books. I mean, I read hundreds of books, and I had been to counseling, pastors counseling and things like that. And I was kind of under the impression that I needed to just kind of buck up, just deal with it, kind of pull up your bootstraps, choose joy. That never worked for me. It never worked for me. And I haven't actually found that it's worked for very many. So, yeah. Yeah.
So you really saw the fruit of unforgiveness in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was angry with everybody. I mean, I was angry with my offender. I was angry with an absentee father. I was angry with my adoptive father. I was angry with my mother. But most importantly, I was really angry with myself. I was angry with myself because I had made choices that were not very good. I mean, I knew right from the very beginning that there was a God. I mean, my mother actually was a woman who did bring us to church. I mean, she's still alive. Bless her heart. She's been a wonderful example for me. She's come to know the Lord, and her faith is a beautiful faith. But back then, um, the grace was absent. And so I had to learn to forgive her. I had to learn to forgive myself as well.
Mhm. Yeah, so now you seem, when you're talking, I don't see a trace of anger or bitterness. You just seem so sweet and calm and approachable. Like, are you, kind of sounds like we're talking about two different people in a way. So how have you seen like the fruit of forgiveness in your life, like manifesting? How has it changed you? How are you different now than you were back then when you were sorting through all these things?
Yeah, that is an amazing thing. Since I moved from Massachusetts to Tennessee, those who knew me in Massachusetts remember. So if I go back to Massachusetts, there is a difference between who I was and who I am now. But those who see me now in Tennessee, they're like, "Oh, I can't even imagine you being like that." I mean, me as a rageful person, it was. But you know, what made the difference was that it was Jesus and me. I came to realize that it was Jesus and me. I remember coming home from a counseling session one night and it was raining, and I just pounded on the steering wheel and I was just crying out to God, why? Why do I have to have all this pain? And there was a song that was playing on my CD called The Friend of a Wounded Heart. And I played that song over and over and over. I'd actually driven into the driveway and parked into the garage, did not want to go in the house. And I just listened to that song over and over and over again. And that's when I realized that Jesus was going to be the friend of my wounded heart. And once I embraced that, things started to change. It wasn't at first because I didn't still understand who I was in Christ. But I decided that I wasn't going to look to my spouse. I wasn't going to look to my in-laws. I wasn't going to look to my parents. I wasn't going to look to my family and my friends. It was Jesus who I was going to look for because it seemed to me that he was the only one that was going to be able to be my friend of my wounded heart.
Yeah, I think that's really an amazing thing that you've pointed out, because I think so many times when we're struggling to forgive, we put expectations on other people. You know, well, I'll forgive when this happens or when that happens or when this changes. And, you know, what I'm hearing you say is that that's irrelevant. It's really just about you and the Lord.
I didn't know that at the time, though. So the fact that we're kind of going over the forgiveness story and you as a forgiveness coach, majority of people who are in that place, they don't understand that. And so if they could seek forgiveness sooner rather than later, they'll come to realize that sooner rather than later as well. And then they'll be able to embrace Jesus as their true healer.
So, Charleen, what was the most surprising thing about your forgiveness journey? What caught you off guard?
What caught me off guard? Well, let me see here. One time when I had gone to counseling and I was doing the one-on-one counseling with the one woman, she had invited me to go to group sessions with other women. And at first, because of my fear, I was reluctant to go, but I decided to go. And it was amazing. Well, actually, I was crying a lot, to be honest with you. So I sat there and I listened to these women tell their story. And it was so moving and so heartbreaking breaking at the same time. I just sat there and I would just weep. And I remember wanting to get up and just hug them. But what was most surprising was I actually felt. Now that might sound strange, but I actually thought that I was such a cold-hearted person that I didn't have any feelings and that I was just so angry all of the time. And any emotion that I felt, whether it was frustration or disappointment or sadness or rejection, it always came out as anger. So the fact that I could actually feel something other than anger was amazing. It was amazing to me. And so I was really surprised at that. And the other thing that I was surprised at was how when I had the opportunity to be real and authentic and honest, that I was able to embrace the freedom that Christ had for me.
Mhm.
If you go to talk with people about how you feel and how your mother this or your father that or your uncle this or your aunt that or your spouse or your children, it's like most people don't like to hear all of that. And so I found that when I was in group or in the counseling, that if I could actually express my anger and then have somebody who was wise enough and who was willing to coach me or to steer me in the direction of forgiveness,
Mhm.
unbelievable healing came from that. So for the longest time, I kept everything in because it wasn't received very well. And of course, I didn't really know how to communicate it very well. But when I was able to be real and authentic, healing started to take place.
Yeah. That's so important that we not bottle things in. You know, the more we stuff it in, the more we suppress it and hide it and ignore it, kind of the worse it becomes and the more it festers and the more it kind of takes over our minds and we don't even realize it. So that's a really powerful thing you just said.
That's why I like the idea of renewed health and heart,
Mhm.
and where wholeness and holiness is the key for me, because spiritually, if we're not dealing with that, it's going to be manifested some other way
Right.
physically.
Yeah.
And so that's why they have to have that whole wholeness thing. You're absolutely correct, Crystal.
Yeah. So I'm sure that, you know, along the road there, you've had all kinds of life lessons and, you know, things that the Lord has taught you. What has been the most significant spiritual takeaway from that journey?
The most significant spiritual takeaway is that it really is about Jesus and me. I said that earlier, but it really is about Jesus and me. And the other thing that surprised me was in the journey was um, that it's okay. It's okay to pursue this healing. Um, for so long, I thought that it wasn't okay, but it's almost as if God gave me permission once I heard the song, The Friend of a Wounded Heart.
Mhm.
And when I walked into the counseling's office, now I didn't walk in there like all sad and rejected, and I walked in there with confidence, with assurance, like you tell me what I need to do, and although it didn't work that easily, like I said before, but it was almost God had given me permission to pursue Him,
Mhm.
to really to go for that healing, to go for that freedom.
So what was your
And it
thought
worked.
process before? Like you said, you felt like you could pursue that freedom. What thought was blocking that before?
I wasn't worthy enough. I wasn't worthy enough. See what I wasn't able to actually offer the gift of forgiveness to anybody until I was able to embrace the gift of forgiveness of God. And I was not worthy. I didn't have $60 to go to the counseling session. No woman would really want to talk to me. My husband did not understand me. My in-laws might not have understood me. It was like I was non-existent, and it didn't insignificant. Whereas in that pursuit of freedom and in that pursuit to release that pain, it's almost like that has a positive intention. It has a positive intention to drive you to the Lord. And He's saying, come to me, come to me. And that's what I got out of it. So when I see other women struggling, it's not like, the Lord, just trust the Lord, or God's going to heal you. It's like, no, that has a positive intention to drive you now. Go ahead. Go ahead, and let's go to the feet of Jesus now. Let's find out how to receive that gift of forgiveness now instead of later.
Mhm. That's really well said. You know, those lies that the enemy continues to berate us with is that you're not worthy,
Mhm.
you know, that you deserve this, that this is all you're ever going to be, that nothing's ever going to change. Like, it's so true. Those should absolutely make us fall on our knees before Jesus. Say,
Right.
this isn't what you have for me, you know, and to know that there is more.
Mhm.
That's really powerful.
When I think of the $60, which is $60 to me is a lot of money, but um, when I think about the investment of it, I would do it all over again. I didn't just go one time. I mean, I went for 9 months.
Mhm.
9 months I went to see her at $60 a week. I would do it in a heartbeat
Yeah,
based on what God has done for me, because He has set me free. And
that's
I mean, if I had found somebody that could have helped me before that, then great, you know, but that's not the way that God chose for it. He wanted me to be healed, and he wanted me to be healed quickly.
Mm-hmm. So you've given us lots of advice so far, Charlene, and it's all been so good, but is there any kind of last word that, you know, listening to it, the audience who's listening is struggling and working through forgiveness, and what message would you have for them?
Well, the message that I would have for them is, number one, to hear me when I say that you are loved.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you may not feel that you are loved, you are loved. And then secondly, I would want you to know that there is hope. Even if you cannot see hope, there is hope.
Mm-hmm.
And that God is a God of healing, and that he does deeply desire that you come to him, and that you allow him to embrace you, to love you, and to heal you. And it is perfectly okay to pursue that. And then thirdly, I think I would want to say that to seek somebody who will allow you to be real and to be authentic and to be honest, even honest with yourself. Mm-hmm. To be honest with yourself, and just know that you are loved and that there is hope. But honesty and realness and authenticness is a part of that.
Absolutely. Well, Charlene, this has just been so sweet to hear your story, and just amazing to see the transformation in your life. Like, it's it leaves you speechless when you see that, to hear that you were once so angry and bitter, and you're just smiling and so full of joy, helping other women. Like, I just praise God for your life and the work that he's done. And thank you so much for your willingness to share. And we really, really appreciate you just coming alongside us in the journey and giving us this message of hope. It is a gift. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, and God bless you, and just may the Lord pour his grace and his mercy upon all of you.
Amen. Well, I'm going to be sending this out to you. I'll be putting Charlene's contact information with this interview. So if you have any questions, I know that she'd be happy to talk to you. If you want to know more about her coaching, you can do that as well. So, all right. Thank you so much, Charlene.
Thank you.